Welcome to this very insightful fireside chat on a topic that is both, I think, very promising, but also very, very challenging. It's called How to Smoothly Scale Gen AI in Your Enterprise. Time to invite our panelists on stage. Of course, moderating this discussion is Leslie. Leslie, I'm going to request you to please join me once again on stage. And without any further ado, I'll invite our panelists, Ramesh Lakshminarayanan, CIO, HDFC Bank; Arvind Iyer, Head Marketing, Pyramid Capital and Housing Finance Limited; and Viswanath Ramaswamy, Vice President, Technology Sales, India, South Asia, IBM. Ladies and gentlemen, we need a powerful round of applause for a power panel so that they can give us powerful insights. You know how it works. All right, Leslie, over to you.
Which places did not have this? So we have banking, we have again pyramidal finance, of course we have the infrastructure part from IBM to get a better understanding of what we have already spoken, taking the topic further. Without much ado, Ramesh, we have spoken on so many occasions. I have sort of, yeah, I would say I've tracked the journey of how HDFC moved through your conversations, seeing how you have adopted AI over a period of time. I think that conversation we have been having for the last decade, if I'm not mistaken. Right from SMAC, from getting on to cloud computing, then adding the SMAC I to it, and then moving on to AI, and now of course we're talking about generative AI. So when we're talking about generative AI, that whole transition, when you quickly tell us what are the kind of benefits or the opportunities that you're seeing as you're moving into this space, how it is helping in productivity, efficiency, given that yours is a highly regulated sector?
So I think very rich set of cue that we got from the earlier panel, and it's no different where we are going with that. So from a it's a world that's evolving right now, Leslie. I don't think we've kind of understood it fully. Let me be very honest about it. Okay, that's the first thing I want to kind of say. If it's very, very, I think, very initial days of GenAI. There's lots and lots of time to go. I know it's come at us like a meteor, and now we kind of looking at it and saying, what do we do with it? Bank, the journey of HDFC Bank in that sense, and it's a regulated entity, so I think we just need to be a little bit more careful, but there is tremendous power. Again, AI by itself is not new. Anybody would tell you AI has been there for ages, and banks were probably one of the earliest adopters in that sense in credit and fraud, because those were the first areas to really look at AI as a decision-making capability. But GenAI is kind of evolving, and see, the way we see is that it's not my terminology, but I borrowed it from Google, which is very interesting, is that we look at it from two sides actually. We look at AI as what the classical AI as the left side of the brain actually, and what we look at the GenAI as the conversational or narrative AI, which is the right side of the brain. So both have to coexist and both have to kind of move forward. As an example, if you want a decision in a banking industry saying stop a particular transaction from fraud, it's a binary 1-0 decision based on predictions and previous behavior. Maybe a classical AI will work far better there today. While on the other side, if you have to kind of look at it and say, hey, look, give me a narration or give me a concise report of a particular, credit analysis, that will be the GenAI side. So GenAI is kind of more and more on the right side at this point of time. I know there are certain areas where the intersection is started happening, which is time series intersection on LLMs, but it's a topic that's still evolving. Coming back to the bank, so we look at it, the evolution from both sides. GenAI specifically, most of the usage has happened on the public AI models right now. So when you look at public AI, what I mean is openly available AI, where you can put any data on the table. And what we are slowly shifting to is how do we get our private data onto a model that we can kind of do on our own, and then kind of tune the data. the use cases are phenomenal, but getting the architecture of the GenAI is extremely critical. That's what the discussion today is. And I'll tell you, that's a bigger battle at this point I have to surmount. Where do the GPU computes come from? Can I go on public cloud? How do I do a vector DB based segregation? How does a LangChain play?
I'll be coming to the challenges.
We'll get into all of those discussions as we go along. But creating the infrastructure is a first impediment, and we are kind of working in a dual mode, what we call as the on-prem mode of looking at the GenAI. We're also trying to see how to look at public AI in some spaces. And I'll talk about the use cases as we go along in the discussion, because there are multiple use cases. It's imagination.
It will be nice if you gave a couple of...
Let me tell you what we are doing. One is very interesting is, I believe statement is a very, very important asset that the banks carry, but it's a dumb asset at this point of time. Imagine if you could talk to your statements or converse with your statements, how beautiful it would be. Why do you have to go to a mobile, download a statement, put it in an Excel, find an entry, this particular SI was paid on this particular date. I mean, just tell the statement that tell me when was my last SI paid for this particular company. It's a very powerful use case in the hand of the customer. But someone like in the earlier session said, Mohit said that, look, we also want to do co-piloting. So a lot of our, for example, our RBI regulation policies, just the interpretation of those policies, it's public data. But, reading through these policies, interpreting it and understanding, people don't have time and also the depth to do it. Some of these areas, we have started using, GenAI in that sense. So like I said, very interestingly, and I'll talk what is the art of the future. These are some of the use cases that we started working on. But it's early days, as I said, the creating the right infrastructure. I've also been involved with some of the infrastructural groups. For example, can I do a on-prem model on GenAI from a co-hosting perspective? I've also been talking to, for example, Bharat GPT is a very key initiative that some of you may not be associated with, but it's a very important initiative. I believe one of the biggest power is the regional language control, and we will get out of the English slavery using the LLM. I'm very, very confident about it. And that's also going to change the financial sector in a big way, because the accessibility of the language and the barrier is still a barrier. We still think we have done brilliantly as a digital economy, but there's still more to be done actually. So that's where we are going.
Yeah, good observation. I mean, I'm glad you gave those examples, and since we are speaking about Bharat GPT, of course, I think you are referring to the Bharat GPT program, right? By the 7 IITs and 2 triple IITs.
Yes, Leslie.
So they have got what is known as the Hanuman series, the foundation models, which I think are going to be anywhere between 4 billion parameters and 40 billion parameters. But these are totally localized kind of LLMs that India is planning to build. Of course, then we have a host of other ones like Project Indus from the Mahindra Group itself, Tech Mahindra, and then of course Krutrim and some others. So about 8 to 10 kind of LLMs. Yeah, interesting that you said it. In your case, Arvind, you're also from a regulated entity and Pyramid Housing and Finance. Now, typically when CMO comes, and Tuhina will smile, I can see her smiling already. So when you talk about the CMO functions, that's another very strong area where GenAI is being put to use. Could you give us some, tell us about how you are looking at this entire space and some examples that will help us understand how you're implementing it?
Yeah, okay. I'll probably start with the story of who we are and what we do. We are a relatively new company. I mean, the Piramal Group has been around for a while, but the kind of business we do, which is, we lend to the Budget Bharat customer. So this is typically, somebody who's in tier 2 towns, has a very small wallet size, and probably is running, to give you an example, a Kirana store, and perhaps, the wife and the husband are both engaged in the same business. And when you talk about how do you make them credit worthy, that's a whole different challenge, right? So what kind of underwriting, credit, risk models would you be able to use when there is not enough paperwork about them? So I think the genesis of the business started from there. And thankfully, we've had the dividend of being a cloud-first company as a result of that. So I think what we've done is, so because of this, and a large part of our marketing is been, very hinterland based. It's very touch and feel. I mean, the customer is somebody who you need to really, really interact with. It's a very high touch, sort of environment. But having said that, there is the fact that we scaled pretty in a non-linear manner, because we did acquire DHFL 2 years ago, and we were in about half the pin codes of the country overnight, and that naturally meant that, like you said, Ramesh, having linguistic capability of being able to talk to every different kind of customer with a cultural nuance is not something that comes naturally. So we've spent a lot of time doing that kind of work. We've experimented with Bhashni. We are now really looking forward to what Bharat GPT does. So a lot of NLP related work is something that we are fronting, but at the same time, we love our tools. So there is this whole thing about, being able to create content, being able to create like text-based, not just multimodal, but just text-based information that can be put out. And we've tried to use that to stuff that's more, that's more like, stuff that needs to be said during the course of the interaction or transaction with the customer, where, it's just information that needs to be disseminated in a certain manner. And how do you do that at scale? So that's what you use text for. But really, if you were to talk about the other side of it, which is really images and videos, I don't think we're in a place where we could pick up something right up that's there and pretty much just use it. I mean, anecdotally, I could tell you that you will find an example. You'll find a blog article that's written about Midjourney. So there's this guy who wrote about two world leaders engaging in a basketball game, and he entered that prompt in 2023. And it gave him basically like garbage, right? And by 2024, when he repeated the same thing again, Midjourney was able to give him something that looks absolutely stunning. Interestingly, we took some of our own outputs that came straight out of Midjourney or DALL-E or any of those, and we showed them to some of our customers. उन्होंने क्या कहा पता है? पता है कि यार ये तो बहुत अच्छा दिख रहा है, लेकिन ये असली में कौन है? So they're not able to believe it's real. So we've used a very pick up and try and experiment. We're always in beta, we're always agile, but we're really not pinning down on anything that we want to particularly do. There are a ton of use cases. I think even the previous panel did speak about it, which is about making sure that there is a lot of the democratization of data that can happen within the company, and we're doing that a lot more. And we're seeing, because even the internal employee for us is a customer, right? At the end of the day, I mean, if like how Mohit said, if the middle tier of our workforce is able to be productive by, let's say, another 30% more, and if you're able to give them something that is more gamified, we've literally given them like an equivalent of a computer G, where they can go and ask, where do I stand today, and how can I beat the other guy? That's a far more, better use case for us to able to take and scale over time.
Great. Vishy, I have taken the liberty of calling him Vishy. In your particular case, I mean, you also, just like Rishi, you speak to multiple partners, so you have got a 360-degree view across sectors. So are you seeing, enough companies making this jump from, say, pilots to scaling up? And if they're doing so, what is it that they're doing right, or what is it that they're doing wrong in the process?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Leslie. I think, as the previous panel had mentioned, right? So if 2023 or late 2022 was a year where AI was like kind of a hobby for most of the CXOs, it's become real in 2024, right? And 2024 will be probably remembered as one of the historic years where AI is going to go at scale, right? You mentioned that, and Sandeep also did mention, the adoption index across clients is just increasing, not by the year, I would say by every quarter, right? And pilots are getting converted into real projects across use cases. So there are two dimensions to this. One is a dimension which is horizontal, which is cutting across your clients, your stakeholders, and your employees, and your suppliers as well, that is one dimension. The other dimension is looking at various use cases across departments. So the point what Arvind mentioned or Ramesh mentioned, and even the previous panel, that use cases are getting built and grown over a period of time. And that becomes a challenge, or I would say, I think Manu had asked a question of anxiety. That becomes even more anxious to build and convert and make it more real, right? So it is happening at a very fast rate. Now, the organizations which have really got that act right is fundamentally, I would say, there is no AI without IA, right? You don't have an AI if you don't have the right information architecture. And one of the charts which was presented, data matters, right? And if you do not have your data pipeline in place, no matter whatever intelligence you put, you're not going to get the relevant output. It's as straight correlation as you can get, right? So data matters, and real IA can generate a real, more accurate AI, generative AI as well. Where I think a lot of challenges which really come in, where organizations are not able to scale further, right, is where they fundamentally don't have an IA, right? So in that anxiety to be another AI in use case for the sake of being an AI, if you don't have your foundation in place, so I would kind of put it like IA is more like the digestive system and AI is the nervous system, right? They have to coexist, right? And that's really where organizations are not got that right, and they're not able to convert pilots into real projects where the data is not there. The second thing is there's a plethora of use cases, and that's where ruthless prioritization of that use case is important. So in the anxiety that I want to have AI across pervasive everywhere, rather you ruthlessly prioritize which use case you would first go with for getting better ROI, right? So it could be an HR use case, like Rishi talked about what we implement within IBM as a Ask HR, or it could be a channels, ecosystem, it could be marketing, it could be finance, and so on and so forth. So you really prioritize of what is it solving as a business outcome and the ROI behind it. And Gobind also really touched upon it briefly as well, right? So ruthless prioritization also is an important factor of what would you take to convert that pilot to a real-time project, right? I think these are the two fundamental things which makes organizations successful with AI and not so successful with AI, right? So that's how I'd put it at.
Oh, that's extremely well said. I mean, the ruthless prioritization, and who better to, than Ramesh to ask about the ruthless prioritization, and then, of course, I'll follow up with Arvind too. So, Ramesh, in your particular case, of course, from the challenges point of view, I think with generative AI, I mean, it was with AI also with GANs and all that kind of stuff. We had deep fakes. Now it's getting to voice cloning. It's getting to many other things that are, making even probably the video KYC process quite challenging, for that matter of fact. That's one part of it. The second part of it is, as what Vishy pointed out, from the information architecture point of view. Now you are dealing with multiple legacy platforms that you have to integrate with these newer kind of platforms. So if you could just tell us a bit of, quickly about some of the challenges that you're facing and how are you addressing them?
I think all the points well made. The challenges first of all, on the IA side are very real, like Vishy said. I think if you don't get your data right, you can try what you want to do, because that's the fundamental foundation on which it is built, right? So, and that needs a lot of thought process, because it's okay to guzzle billions of public data and then put it into a model and then show something. So, it's going to be expensive. Maybe we can keep kind of talking about it. And especially for regulated entities more so lessly, because you don't have the ability to really go to the cloud on an open basis and do something experimentation, because you have to really do something on the ground and kind of ensure that it's in line with the regulation. And there will be a lot of paraphernalia which will come on top of the information security world. It has to kind of come on top of that as well. So I think the creation of the infrastructure, and what is the right infrastructure? Is it an on-prem, it's a cloud, it's kind of a hybrid? All of that questions will come as a challenge for sure, and we really need to kind of deep dive. Third part is fraud and security. I do think, like you said, deep fake and some of the other fraud things are real, because again, especially in an economy of our size and scale today, and the kind of digitization we have seen, video KYC probably, for example, a lot of the other nations are in that sense still behind us, and so we have probably some of these problems will hit us first, actually, to be honest. And then, of course, I also see somewhere in that horizon the quantum compute coming through, and with the LLM kind of coming through in a big way, the security parameters are going to be absolutely different. Of course, we also see that AI for AI kind of coming in and helping, and that play out, whether it's tuning the models, whether using AI to again further kind of fine tune your own fraud models and stuff like that, and we'll see where it goes. But clearly, like you said, challenges are on infrastructure fund, challenges are on ROI, which is a very, very real challenge. We have to get. I think we should not rush through. I think one of the other things is every company should not be pushing, saying, I'll do 10 things. You'd rather pick 2 things, but those 2 things have to be done in a way that the ROIs are justified from a CFO perspective. And then, of course, fraud and all of these challenges will continue. So, net, yeah, those are the areas we'll have to watch for.
I think you also have come back to that same thing of ruthless prioritization. I like that too. Arvind, in your case, you don't have the legacy problems as such. So what does this whole stress on IA mean for you? From a challenge perspective, from an architecture perspective, what kind of framework would you be working on?
So currently, to be very precise, we are more like a garage at the moment. There's just no other better way of saying it. If we've been told otherwise, I think we haven't seen it in the works. So what we've essentially done is we've said that. So our entire underwriting fraud credit risk model is all built on a traditional AI. In fact, we call it the Malai sandwich. It's MLAI. So adding the generative layer on top is something that we've been careful about. Yeah, it's kind of really fancy. But then we said there are 3 things we really want to do. One is we want to stay agile. We always want to be in beta. And the third thing is we want to be able to see if there is some sort of rapid prototyping that we can do and then get it out there and see if it scales. But then again, like I think Sandeep said earlier, start with a problem statement so we started with saying that what is it that we underlyingly want this to solve for us. And we said that, look, there is a lot of our data is very much on the cloud, and the fact that even if we are able to democratize that information for a set of cohorts where you would typically need, let's say, either it's manpower or it's tech infrastructure or any of the other investments that may be needed, you kind of try to see if you can eliminate that layer by using this. And we've done a few pilots there, and some of them have scaled across the organization, and we're fairly happy with the way the version 1.0 has kind of turned out to be. But really, I think we're constantly just looking at what's the next problem that we can pick up that we could potentially try and solve using GenAI, because it's like, how Ramesh said, it's the kind of compute power that is needed if you were to 10x the number of users who are going to be querying the LLM every time is going to be monstrous. So one needs to be careful about that. So while we're not saying ROI really, we're just saying what's the cost of being able to do this using generative AI vis-a-vis doing it the traditional method, and then looking at and being ruthlessly honest on saying, are we making the right calls at that moment? Yeah. And sticking with those.
Fair enough. Vish, in your case, you're dealing with big companies, you're dealing with small companies, some like Arvind also probably, where they may have different sets of questions. If you were to just say, okay, among your ruthless priorities, as you said, I'm stuck with that. 3 things that CXOs need to keep in mind when, looking at the infrastructure point of view, as far as GenAI is concerned.
Right. So let me first define infrastructure, right? So it's infrastructure more colloquially means hardware, right? But I would like to put in a larger canvas to that word called infrastructure. It's infrastructure as hardware, plus what Ramesh spoke about, the security principles around that infrastructure to run an AI model, and probably even the biases and ethics and explainability to that, right? So it kind of look at infrastructure with a larger canvas and just not purely from a GPU or a CPU, or do I have this compute, right? So let's go to the first one on the hardware, right? So if you look at generative AI, there are fundamentally two broad principles, or I would say, outcomes. One is you have a model which is trained, and then you use that trained model to make an inference, right? So the myth is that if it's a trained model and you're not retraining the model, you can run it on CPUs, right? So you don't require, and I kind of define CPU and GPU as CPU is a jet, but a GPU is a jet which can multitask, right? So a GPU can run much faster, more, yes, all of the capabilities are there. But if you already have a trained model which you do not require a retraining, a CPU can do the job, right? And in IBM, as we have multiple technologies based on the Linux one, where we have a Telum processor on our Linux one, which can actually do the inferencing engine. Or for that matter, on the other extreme, we have technologies like Spectrum Fusion, which actually, where CPUs and GPUs can coexist in one single footprint, right? So, but if you're retraining the model is when you require a whole lot of GPUs, right? So, and that's one challenge. Either you do it on-prem or in the cloud, as Ramesh had mentioned. So that's one element of the infrastructure. So your makeup, whether you're going to retrain the model or continue with the trained model, what is already available with you. Then comes the security principles and designs around it, right? So considering that a lot of the point which I made earlier, that you need to have an IA to have AI, the security principles around the AI model is of prime importance, because you're more and more exposing yourself, and the exposure or apertures are much, much more when you do such things. So security design is of prime importance. That's the second piece. And of course, what really comes, the third one, is more explainability and the theme of today's thing, which is responsible AI, that in the entire AI pipeline across infrastructure and IA. So you have a data pipeline, you have an AI pipeline. Am I able to really go and explain the outcome of that AI without any biases and so on and so forth, is also a part of that infrastructure, right? So each one of them go hand in glove. You can't look at just hardware in isolation and ignore the other two, right? They have to be together, because that's how the entire AI pipeline really works. So these are the three elements which are very, very critical when designing an infrastructure. Now, obviously, you can go, as Sandeep, if you recollect one of the slides which Sandeep shared, that one of the parameters of the 5 things was AI is multi-model on a hybrid design, right? So that's where we are, organizations are moving towards. So that's also one of the design principles which really come when you get into that.
So we're also talking not only about responsible AI, we're talking about responsible and explainable AI infrastructure.
That's right.
I think that's extremely important. I can take one question from the audience. We have time for one. A big hand. Thank you.
What an absolutely incredible conversation, gentlemen. Please rise, and I'm going to request you to come towards the center of the stage and come together. I'm going to quickly move to the other side of the stage, and let's capture this moment in an amazing group photograph. And ladies and gentlemen, one more round of applause for this incredible conversation. Ramesh, Arvind, and Vishy, as we all know him. Thank you so much for not just being here, but for making us think. And Leslie, on behalf of all of us, thank you for moderating both our power panels. You infuse the power in these panels. Thank you.